Airport travel tips, 20 things to know before the next time you fly. I'm Chris, this is Yellow Productions. I do travel guides that are fun, informative, entertaining. And in this video, I'll be telling you 20 things to know so you can have a calm and stress-free experience on your next trip through an airport. Air travel can be hectic, a miserable experience for inexperienced travelers, but if you know some of the tricks of the frequent flyer trade, air travel isn't really all that bad. And so in this video, I'm going to tell you basically the things that I do before I fly, before going to an airport, when I get to an airport and going through security. This is a live stream, so if you're on the live stream, definitely let me know what you think. Definitely let me know what your airport tips are, and if there's anything that I missed. So on the live stream, welcome on YouTube, Mr. Viper, Chinmay, Anthropomorphic Animal, Poke, and Frozen Kebab. All right, so my first tip for going to an airport, and by the way, YouTube is still doing this things where the text is reversed, and so I am showing you yellow submarines instead. My first tip for air travel is to absolutely check in online. Check in online before you go to the airport. I've fallen victim to this myself, where I've said, you know, I don't need to check in online because I've got a ticket, I've got a seat. What can happen? Well, if there's bad weather, and the flight, for example, is weight restricted, then if you're one of the last people to check in, then you don't get to get on the plane. If you don't have a seat, well, sometimes your check-in time can actually be what helps them decide who to give seats to first. I've also heard experiences of people who they didn't check in online, but then they got to the airport and got in the security line and checked in, but they didn't check in before the check-in cutoff, which is maybe 45 minutes before the flight, even though it didn't board for 30 minutes before, and the airline gave away their seat because they weren't checked in earlier enough. So definitely check in online. Particularly if you're traveling Southwest, you should check in online because Southwest assigns the seating order priority right 24 hours before. That's always the trick for Southwest, is to be like 24 hours and check in immediately. Yippee asks, does it help if you have a business class ticket? They might be a little bit more lenient, but if you haven't checked in before their check-in cutoff, they might very well give away your seat. Or if they are changing equipment to a different plane and there's less seats, right, they're going to give priority to the people who checked in first. Also, if you're a airline elite member and you're vying for upgrades, check-in time is something they use for that too. So check in online. All right. Poke's got a few tips right there. His tips are: number one, bring your passport. Number two, bring a light backpack with necessities. Check in online is his number three, and wear no jacket. It takes too much time during security check. Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about jackets and security checks and things like that. So let's see. Justin Thomas says, if I have bags, I don't check in online because I'm One World Emerald. I still check in online even if I have no bags because I want the airline to know that I've sent a signal that says I'm going to be there. If you're the person who hasn't checked in, even if you've got elite status, you might still be out of luck. Number two, print your boarding pass and your itinerary. I know that a lot of us that are digital natives love to just use our phone and have the boarding pass on the phone, but let me tell you, I have been at the airport so many times when people are sitting there with their phone and it crashed and it doesn't work and it won't scan. You know what? Your paper copy always works. And printing out the itinerary is pretty important too. Maybe not a big deal if you're traveling from someplace like Los Angeles to Dallas, but if you're going internationally, there's a lot of times that they might actually ask you for your itinerary, particularly if things go wrong. If you're flying an airline you're not familiar with, if you can't check in, things like that, and you need help, it's worthwhile to have that itinerary so you can show it to them that has your confirmation number and all of your details. Not, hey, who are you and where you're going? I don't know, I don't have anything, and my phone battery died, or it doesn't work. My paper, the battery never dies on my paper. Joining us on Facebook, Mr. Pickles. Good to see you, Mr. Pickles. Thanks for joining in the live stream. Mike Smith says TSA Pre is worth its weight in gold. Absolutely, we're going to talk about TSA PreCheck coming up. Yippee says, that helps when you go through immigration to show your return ticket. Yeah, sometimes when you get to airports, they'll also ask for, like, show me your return trip or show me where you're going next. Like, if you're going to Japan, they might, for the particular visa you're getting, like if it's a tourist visa, they might want to see an itinerary that shows that you're leaving and you're not staying. Mr. Pickle says, always print boarding passes for all people in the party. Don't trust other people's batteries. That's a good tip as well. Yeah, if you're traveling with a bunch of people, don't trust them to have printed out or trust their batteries. I love it. Because, you know, that's always like the lousy friend or the lousy traveling person when you're like, dude, sucks that your boarding pass doesn't work, but I want to get on my flight. You know, at that point, sort of every person for themselves at the airport. But I guess if you love them and they're like a loved one, then you actually want to make sure they get on the plane. So that's probably not the best tip. Jamina joined in from Costa Rica. Welcome. Half the Fiber joined in, says, glad for one of your streams. Thanks for coming in, Half the Fiber. Joshua Morellas asks where I got Topher from. Sorry if this is unrelated. San Diego Zoo. It was quick. So Tanner Wilson says, when applying for TSA PreCheck, do you have to have a certain number of flights, miles, etc. in order to be eligible, or is it open to everyone? Tanner, I'll be talking about TSA PreCheck on number, I think when I get to security. So hold that thought. And ask me again if I don't answer. A lot of people are talking about Clear, which is another U.S. program to go through security. I think TSA PreCheck's pretty good too. All right, so now number 3. The third tip I have before going to an airport, here, let's go airplanes instead of numbers that you can't read. The third tip is to, here, let's put this right here so people see it on Facebook too. The third thing is to, there's glare on that. The third thing is to check your flight status before going to the airport. This is a great one with airplanes for number 3. So before you go to the airport, before you get in your car, before you get in the taxi, before you get on the train, check your flight status. If the flight is delayed for 4 hours, if the flight is canceled, it's a lot easier to just go ahead and deal with those things at home than it is to do it at the airport. Because you never know, you might be on a flight tomorrow if your flight was canceled, and you don't want to figure that out when you get to the airport if you could have figured it out sooner. I'm going to talk at the end. Number 20 is about what to do if you have a canceled or delayed flight, and I think that's a really good one. So if you're on now, make sure you hang on for that for the good tips about what to do for a canceled or delayed flight. Also, you want to know what terminal your flight is leaving from. There's a lot of airports, and actually where Topher and I just went, we went to Seoul. Terminal 1 and Terminal 2 are like a 20-minute drive away. So you want to make sure you get to the right terminal, because if you don't, at a lot of airports, you might be kind of hosed from a flight departure perspective. And also, a lot of airlines offer the ability to subscribe for flight updates. Definitely do that. If they have a mobile app or things like that, subscribe for those flight updates so you get texts or emails, because then you'll be the first one to know. Let's see, on Facebook, Jose Pineda joined in from Los Angeles. Welcome, Jose. Eduardo asks, how to get a seat upgrade? Is it possible? Eduardo, it is possible. You can certainly pay. You can pay to buy a better ticket, or if you've got frequent flyer status, you can get upgraded based on your frequent flyer status. If you don't have a frequent flyer status with the airline, then chances are you're not getting an upgrade. Sorry. Mr. Pickles gives a tip of delete old boarding passes from Apple Wallet. That's a great tip. If you save your boarding passes to your phone, either an Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, screenshots, things like that, delete them when you don't need them anymore so you're not standing there flipping through 10 different old boarding passes. Chin May says, do they send text messages if the flight is delayed? Although checking is a good idea. They do send text messages if the flight is delayed. They do, but, you know, one of the things that I give a tip to this is also, don't just check the flight you're on, but also check where the flight's coming from. Some airlines make that easy, like United Airlines will have an option to check where this plane is coming from. And so sometimes the apps and the text messages lie. And so, but if you can go and look and say, okay, well, I'm going from Los Angeles to Dallas, and my flight leaves at 1 p.m., but my plane that is coming in for me isn't getting in until 1:30 p.m., there's no chance it'll leave at 1 p.m. So in that case, you either A, don't have to be stressed, or B, you're going to know that it's going to get delayed, and so you're going to know that you're going to have to take some action. Justin Thomas says, use Flight Aware and check the inbound flight. Right, he just gave that tip before I did, so excellent, great tip. Tanner Wilson comments about the terminal, says Dallas-Fort Worth has 5 terminals, but the good news is they have a great connector that connects the different terminals. Dallas does, and not all airports are like Dallas. Ben from the Travelman podcast from Australia joined in. Howdy, Ben. Thanks for joining in. Z Blanc gives a tip about military families. Look out for USO lounges in airports. You can rest shower. They have the amenities that will be able to help during a long transit. That's a great tip, Z Blanc, and we'll be talking about lounges in a future number, but I think lounges are a great tip. And a lot of people who haven't experienced lounges might not know how great lounge access actually might make their travels. Jose on Facebook says, hi Chris, I'm going to Montego Bay, Jamaica next month for my honeymoon. I'll keep in mind some of your traveling tips. Love your videos. Jose, thanks very much for the love. Mr. Pickles gives a tip that says, when checking in your baggage, take a photo of the bag. It will be easier to describe when filing a claim. That's a really great tip, and I've never done that, but I think I should. I do have pictures in my phone of like, you know, my luggage in various places, and but that is one where I've had a lot of lost luggage, and it's always been kind of like hard to describe what the luggage looks like. I'm looking for this picture of our luggage when we were leaving Seoul, and you know, when you want to find a picture, it's always really hard to do. Yeah, here we go. This was right, picture I took of our luggage leaving. So if you're curious what the Yellow Productions luggage looks like, we're always traveling with some hard case Ramos and some duffel bags if we're checking in our bags. You can see that up there on Facebook too. 2 cameras that I'm holding this at. All right, let's go on to number 4. 4th tip is to download the mobile app for your airline. Pretty much every airline has a mobile application. And this is one where if your flight's delayed and you have issues, that mobile app will be worth gold. Everybody has one, even like Southwest Airlines, United, American Airlines, always have the mobile app, and you can use, like if you're connecting for flights, when I touch down, the first thing I do if I'm like connecting in Dallas, I'll open the mobile application and check the connecting status. Actually, a lot of airlines will give you the ability to use the app in the air. So United Airlines will do that. So you can check halfway through and be like, hey, that connection I had, is it actually gonna make it? The app can also be really useful in the event that you need to change flights, because sometimes it'll come up and say, hey, you can change to these other flights. And we'll talk more about why you might want to know about what other alternate flights are when we get to what to do in the event of cancellations and delays. And Mr. Pickles Poke on YouTube says, nice tip on the luggage photo. Definitely new to him. And Yippee said, good point as well. So thank you, Mr. Pickles. Ben from the Travelman podcast says the Alaska Airlines check-in and security at San Diego is so unorganized, or maybe that when I was there. What did you find unorganized about check-in and security? I am curious. And Mr. Pickles gives another 2 great tips. 1, email yourself photos of your ID and passports. That's good to have as well, because you never know when your ID and passports might get stolen. I always keep like a photocopy of my passport in some secret safe hiding place as well, just in case something does happen to my passports. I've got a photocopy at the ready. And Mr. Pickles also says, download the GoGo Entertainment app so you can watch movies on the plane. That if you're going to do GoGo in-flight entertainment. A lot of airlines also are doing the whole, like United does the in-flight entertainment, but you have to have the mobile app download before you get on the plane. So definitely make sure you have your entertainment before you're on the flight. Mr. Pickles says he's on fire. You're on fire, and you know there's no like. I can like the comment, but I can't give you a fire icon. That would be cool if I could. Anthony says Delta has a good app. Anthony, what do you like about the Delta app? Brandon Torres says it's a great idea of checking your luggage for the claim. We'll keep that in mind. Yeah, and yeah, if you've lost your luggage, you definitely know what that's like. I once lost my luggage. This is an interesting lost luggage story. I was going to France. I was landing in Marseille, and my luggage didn't get there. And I go to the lost luggage counter. I was flying in on Brussels Airlines, and I go to the lost luggage counter. I'm like, hey, my luggage isn't here. They're like, do you have the bag tags? I'm like, here they are. I'm like, do you guys know where they are? They look in their computer. He's like, no, we don't know where your bags are. I'm like, well, describe them. And I'm like, how do I get them back? And they're like, well, every day you can call us between 10 and 2 and 2 to 4 every day. Just call us and check in. My bags never made it to France. They did make it back to San Diego 3 weeks later with about 15 tags on it from everywhere the bag has been. And the bags were like sopping wet, and all of my clothes inside were blue and green. It was a pretty miserable experience. So from that, I always try to carry on if I can, and those were nylon soft bags, and so after that experience, I always travel with a hard case. That's when I totally got into the whole Rimowa thing about hard case Rimowa suitcases that don't get water in them. All right. Speaking of water, the fifth thing to do, and this is still in the before going to the airport, is to bring, well, not a cup, but to bring an empty water bottle. Pretty much no airlines anywhere allow you to bring water bottles through security anymore in any airport. There's a few exceptions. Japan domestically is an exception, that if you have water, they'll check it in a little machine if you're going domestically, and if it's water, then you get to go through. But most airports are enforcing the, no liquids more than, whatever, 3 ounces, 100 milliliters. But you can always bring empty bottles through, and then you can just fill up your empty bottle with water as you get to the airport. Lots of airports are doing the water bottle filling things, or if you have lounge access, maybe fill it up with iced tea, or maybe fill it up with something a little better from the lounge. But you'll need an empty bottle to do that, because who wants to spend $5 for a bottle of water at the airport? That is highway robbery. Let's see, Poke talked about IDs, and he says, I always have backups of my ID on everything in 3 places: my phone, my email, and a printout inside my luggage. That's a good tip, too. Justin Thomas says he loves the baggage tracking feature in the AA app. It's nice to know your bag has been loaded before you take off, especially connecting. That is pretty nice, Justin. I like to sit, it's always best, when you have the seat that's near where they're loading the luggage, and you can look out the plane and be like, aha, there's my bag going on the plane. That's always pretty nice, too. All right, the 6th tip for airport travel is to get to the airport early. So many times I've traveled with people, and they're like, look, we don't need to get to the airport. We just, our flight's at 2. I think we can leave home at 1 and be there just fine. And it's like, not so much. I mean, maybe if it's your home airport and you're really familiar with it, you know what the security patterns are, yeah, then maybe you can be kind of aggressive and not get to the airport that early. But if you're traveling big airports, you don't know this and that, really that 2 to 3 hour rule can be a good idea, because security lines can be crazy. Check-in lines can be crazy, particularly if you're on budget carriers. Ben from the Travelman podcast says, Chris, Mandy, and I nearly missed our flight in San Diego. Yeah, how long did you stand in check-in and security? I am curious. And he says, Alaska Airlines was terrible. So that's a good reason to get there early, because if you got a bunch of time, then maybe you don't mind standing in line as long. There's nothing more stressful than knowing that you're short on time and arriving to huge lines. That's pretty awful. All right. The 7th tip for getting to airports for airport travel is to consider arriving at the airport on the arrivals level, not departures level, right? Like every airport, if you're coming in there by car, if they're big airports, they'll have multiple decks for cars, and there will typically be departures, and then there will typically be arrivals. Arrivals is usually a more ground level, and departures is usually an upper level, because the ticket counters are usually up high, and baggage claim is usually down low, right? And they say, if you're arrivals, you'll pick people up at baggage claim. If you're departures, at the ticket counter. A lot of airports, the particularly in the morning, like if you're there at like 7 a.m., the only people that are at the airport at 7 a.m. are people that are leaving. And so everybody is on the departures level and nobody is on the arrivals level. A number of airports I fly out of, going down the lower deck can save 20 minutes in being dropped off. So definitely consider that. Sometimes if I've got Uber or taxi drivers like at LAX or things like that, I'll say, no, I don't want to go up there. Drop me off down there. And the pros will be like, oh, thank you for saving us the 20 minutes of driving around that loop. It is awful. Anthony Perenio says he likes to get to the airport 4 hours early to be safe and hang out at the lounge. That's excellent. I'm curious, Anthony, what lounge do you like to go to? We'll certainly talk about lounges in a little bit. Eric says he doesn't pack water bottles, but he packs Starbucks mugs. Saves lots of money. That is a good tip, too. And Mr. Pickle says he uses a tile tracking device in his baggage, and then when on board, he can open the app and know it's in the plane. Also, when landed, I can track the bag as it's coming out of the baggage belt. That's a great tip, Mr. Pickles. OC Girl had a tile. I think we never got really super advanced in using it, but that's a pretty interesting, nice way to have it. That way, I guess you don't have to pay that much attention to baggage claim because you're like, oh, I'll get a buzz when it gets nearby. Mike Smith on YouTube says, be strategic where you hub through. As a United guy, I take time of year into consideration whether to hub through Chicago or Denver. Sometimes Houston can be rough in late summer or fall. Mike, that's a great tip, and it's not one that I have a number of, but it's an excellent one, and I'll say I do the same thing. Yeah, you definitely need to pay attention to what the weather patterns are that time of year. I've given tips before just about general travel planning. Earlier flights are typically better than later flights. I don't like getting up in the morning. I don't like being at the airport at 6 or 7 in the morning, but the flights at 6 and 7 in the morning almost always leave on time. Why? Because they've been there from the night before. So if there's any mechanical issues, they've worked on them. If they were delayed getting there before, they were delayed getting in at midnight, so they've got plenty of time to just sit there and wait for the takeoff in the day. Particularly if you're going to the east coast of the U.S. in the summer, they've got thunderstorms in the afternoon, just a bad time overall to be flying. So definitely think about what are airports and what are their weather patterns. Mr. Pickles gives a tip: when landing at the San Diego airport, take the free hotel shuttle to any hotel and then call Uber from there. You don't have to pay the airport surcharge. Works at any airport too. That's a great tip. A great way to maybe save a little money on A, the airport surcharge, and B, the destination if you can get the airport shuttle to go a little bit away from the airport and closer to your hotel. Great tip. Anna Toy says, ride shares are not allowed in arrivals at SFO. Not sure about other airports. Yeah, Anna, I think it depends on the airport. Interesting. In that case, you might want them to drop you off at the, I don't know, almost like an air train or something, right? Get them to drop you off at the air train by the rental cars and take it in. That might be shorter and you might end up having less traffic. What am I drinking? I'm in a cup from Dickie's Barbecue Pit, because it's a nice yellow cup. But it's passion fruit mango iced tea from El Pollo Loco in this cup. El Pollo Loco, the crazy chicken. It's like a Mexican rotisserie chicken place popular in Southern California. But I like the big yellow cup because it's plastic. It's the big yellow cup. All right. Scotty Campbell joined in from Facebook. He says, love your videos over here in Wollongong, Australia. Scotty, thanks for joining in, mate. I appreciate it. Brandon Torres says, I typically like to get to the airport early to take advantage of the CSA and other stuff to get rid of unnecessary things. Brandon, what's CSA? I'm not familiar with that. And Mr. Pickles, half the fiber, said that's a pretty good tip. Take the hotel shuttle and Uber from there. Lammy Cake says, starting a trip stressed out and rushing is the worst. It certainly is. I agree. And Poke also says that he likes arriving on arrivals. However, Jakarta Airports now forbids people from doing that, so it's a no-go going from Jakarta. Those airports are lame, particularly if it's the morning, right? Like, if it's the morning and it's 7 a.m., who cares? Because there's nobody down there anyway. All right. Number 8. this is in line with the tip about pictures. But number 8 is if you're not taking like an Uber or a taxi to the airport, but you're driving to the airport and you're parking, take a picture of your parking space, you know, because I don't know how many times I've gone someplace, I've been away for 2 weeks and things like that, and I'm like, where the heck did I park my car? And so I will always take a picture of my parking space or the sign that's next to it and the parking structure so that I know when I get back and find my car, I don't have to be like, oh, I've been in Korea for 2 weeks. I don't even know where my car is. I can be like, no, I know exactly where my car is. It's right there. Many airport parking garages have like space numbers. You can take a picture of the parking space number too with your car right in it. I think that is handy. Travelman Podcast asks how I found Seoul Incheon Airport. It was okay. I mean, it's a nice airport. I like Singapore better. I like Hong Kong better. I like Tokyo Haneda better. Like, there's a lot of other airports I like better, particularly because I felt the lounge was lame at Incheon. The Asiana Lounge as the main Star Alliance lounge there, and it was really, really could have used some better food. I mean, there was like some lame pasta and some lame tomato soup. I like good lounges. There used to be a Singapore Airlines lounge in Incheon, but it closed, and so I was very sad. So I did not like Incheon Airport as much as I used to when there was the Singapore Airlines lounge there. Poke says Seoul is good, but it feels a bit bland. Yeah, I think that's a good description. It's a good airport. Yeah, but bland. It's not exciting. Right? I like to be excited. You go to Singapore and there's like a 3-story slide that is exciting. Mr. Pickles says in San Diego, the Airspace Lounge in San Diego prepare meals to go with the Amex Platinum free money. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. There's like, I think 3 Airspace lounges that you can get into with Amex Platinum, and they give you, like the way they do food there is they give you like a $10, like a cash card or something. And I think actually those cash cards, you don't even have to use them the same time. You can like take the cash card. Like if you're arriving at the airport, you can go in, and then when you're coming back, you can get another card. And then the next time you're there, you can get another card. You can have like 3 $10 cards that now give you like $30. But that's a good tip to get food is if you have access to lounges, you know, maybe take some food to go, right? Take a banana, take an apple. If you've got a plastic bag or something, put some food in the bag and take that for later. Travelman Podcast says, isn't there a maglev train from the Seoul airport? No, there's a train, but it's not a fast train. The best way to get from Seoul to the city is like the bus. I've never been in an airport where I've seen more buses from the airport than Seoul airport. And if it is a maglev, then it's like a really slow maglev because it takes the same amount of time as the bus. That could be the case. All right, tip number 9. When you get to the airport after you've parked this and that, you're in the airport. Before you go check in, what's the first thing you should do? The first thing you should do, and it's what the picture I've got of the thumbnail in this thing, is look at the departure monitors. Look at the departure monitors and see the status of your flight. You may not have gotten a text message, but that may say it's delayed. Or take a look at that thing to be like, look, if you're going to San Francisco, maybe your flight's on time, but the 3 before it are all delayed. So there's a pretty good chance that yours might be delayed too. That's the first thing you should do, is look at that monitor when you get there and just make certain that everything you think about your flight is the same thing that monitor says about your flight. The 10th tip for airport travel is now you got to check in. So get in the best line to check in. And the best line may not be the same line that everybody and their mother is in. Many airports, many airlines have different check-in lines. Like in San Diego Airport, Southwest has check-in inside, but they also have curbside check-in. So the curbside check-in might have nobody, while inside there's 1,000 people in that line. Or vice versa, the curbside check-in might have a gazillion people, while inside there is nobody. If you've got elite status, if you've got, you know, first class, the airlines will have different lines for those. Find the best line. And just because you're first class also doesn't mean first class is the best line. First class might have a long line, and so it might actually be better to go to the economy check-in. Or self-serve might have a long line for the self-service machines, but the full-service ticket desk might have nobody at it. So take some time before you just rush into that long line and take a look and see if there's another line that you might get into that might be a little bit shorter. I feel like this is the Disneyland rule too. Like Disneyland is like this too. If you go to Disneyland, you go to the ticket gate and there's like everybody in these huge lines, but then there's like one ticket gate that's open that has nobody at it. Why? Because people just look for the line and say, oh, I better get in that line. James Leno talked about parking and said, in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can reserve parking at BART stations. BART is like the subway, Bay Area Rapid Transit in San Francisco, and then you can take the train to SFO or Oakland less than half the price of airport parking. That's a good tip. And Poke says his tip for the Seoul airport is that trains are rather expensive. It's better off taking the shuttle bus as they have tons of drop-off points around the city. Yeah, and the buses are pretty comfy in Seoul too. And he says, besides, most train stations in Seoul have little no escalator, elevator. It's hell dragging luggages over there. Yeah, I agree with that. I saw lots of suckers in Seoul with their suitcases, and they'd get to a big staircase, and they're like, oh no, it's another staircase. And it's like, yeah, it's another staircase. I don't know. Feel like Korea should be a high-tech country. They should have more escalators, but I feel like I don't know, there's like saving money on escalators, or there's like a staircase union or something. There's really a lack of escalators in the Seoul subway. Eric Hernandez says TSA PreCheck, bypass those lines, take a carry-on, simplify the process. That certainly is simpler, and we'll talk about TSA PreCheck in a little bit, in maybe like 1 or 2 coming up. All right, the 11th tip for traveling through airports is if you're hungry and you want to eat at the airport, figure out where food is before you go through security. Why? Some airports have no food after security, or really lame food after security. So if you're hungry, don't rely on the fact that there will be food once you get through security. Tokyo's a great example. Like a lot of the airports in Tokyo, most of the food is outside security, not inside security. You know, particularly these particularly international airports that do, like, say, travel to the U.S. When you go to the gates in the U.S., there's like one cart that sells chewing gum and saltine crackers. I mean, pretty lame. And that's awful to be hungry and sitting there in the most sterile environment ever. Let's see. Joshua Morella says, I had actually had an experience with this. I saw a line of 5 people waiting for a restroom, which I thought was a hazard because of turbulence can strike. The guy had been on the restroom for 14 minutes. That's a long time, 14 minutes hanging out in the restroom. I assume that's the airplane restroom. Ben asked, what about the Taiwan airport? Is it good? I think it's a decent airport. I mean, I think it's kind of there with Seoul. It's got a new terminal and an old terminal. The new terminal is a lot better. And I think they just opened a subway that goes from Taipei's airport into the city, but I typically take buses or taxis to go into. Poke says he agrees on the food. Jakarta Terminal 3 has less food inside the security. Totally lame, but I heard they're adding more shops in the future. Tanner Wilson says Dallas-Fort Worth has no food at all outside of the security. All of it is after you go through security. Absolutely, Tanner. I like that because I like to go through security and then eat. It's easier to plan your time that way, but not all airports are set up that way. Christy P says Denver is set up that way. There are a lot set up that way, which might make you think all of them are set up that way, but it is really not the case. Mr. Pickle says, download the Priority Pass app and load your Priority Pass card so you can always have it with you. That's a great tip, too, for those of you who have credit cards that give you Priority Pass. Priority Pass is like a lounge access kind of thing, and Priority Pass has an app, which I have on one of my phones. I had on this phone, something like that. But that app, then instead of carrying around your card, you can just show it on there, right? The little, oh, it's too bright for the screen to show it. Trust me, that says Priority Pass in there. Welcome to Lounge Class. It's a great way to look up and see what Priority Pass lounge access is there too. Another thing that I do is always have like a printout that has all of my frequent flyer things on it. So that way, if I'm taking a different airline or something like that, I can say, oh, well, my frequent flyer number is this. And yes, a lot of them I've actually memorized by heart, which is really kind of sad, but not for all the airlines. I don't fly Delta all that much, but if for some reason I get switched to a Delta flight, I do want to give them my frequent flyer number, so I maybe get the miles, maybe get treated a little bit better. Joshua Morella says LAX is the same way. You can only eat if you're through security. Not completely true, Joshua. In the international terminal, there is food outside security, like in the baggage claim level. There's like an Earl of Sandwich and some other things, but most of the terminals in LAX, the food is behind security. Sugar Cat joined in, says it's been a while. It's been a while, Sugar Cat. Thanks for joining in. Poke says, is it commonly known knowledge that foods on airports are generally more expensive? I think it is, Poke, like, you know, I did a video about like tourist traps in Las Vegas, and definitely like airports are tourist traps. I mean, the food being overpriced is awful. That is one thing I like about the airports in Washington, D.C., Washington Dulles, and Washington Reagan. They actually enforce in the airports that the vendors in the airports cannot charge any more in the airports than they do outside. So there's like a Chipotle and a Five Guys and a Potbelly sandwich, and they charge the same thing in the airport that they do outside, which makes it a great place to eat. Except I always end up at the Turkish Airlines lounge and eat there anyway, with my Priority Pass card, so it ends up being free. Right, Robert Liu says, don't forget that some lounges have food too, but it may vary depending on the airline. Yeah, it totally will. And lounges are a great place to eat and relax at the airport. So let's go ahead and talk about lounges now. We talked about Priority Pass. We talked about American Express. Maybe we didn't. I posted a picture on Facebook of the American Express Centurion Lounge at San Francisco Airport. Like the Centurion lounges are some of the best lounges in the US, but I think if you've never been in an airline lounge, the domestic lounges by like United, American, Delta, they basically are places to sit down, get a drink, and some crackers and some cheese and not much else. But the international lounge, like by the international carriers, if you're flying like Cathay Pacific or Singapore Airlines, they are pretty amazing and they're pretty nice. So that's what you want to do. Like if you're a frequent flyer, like your Star Alliance Gold or your One World, whatever the 50K tier is, then you'll typically get lounge access if you're going on international flights. And it's often good to look not for the American carriers if you're flying in the US, but to go find the like overseas carriers, because their lounges will always be better. And you can often find like reviews online. There's like Lounge Buddy or there's Flyer Talk. People will talk about what's in that lounge. So Remy D says, the Istanbul lounge is awesome. Free showers, food, wine, and beer. Yeah, I love showers and lounges. Whenever I go to Tokyo and I connect in Tokyo, I go to the ANA lounge. The first thing I do is take a shower. I go get their ready-made noodles. I go get some curry. Just really good food. You know, Singapore Airlines, they'll often have like dim sum and satay and just amazing things. So it's like the range of lounges is pretty wide. And then there's Priority Pass, which Priority Pass comes with a lot of premium credit cards. If you have like a Chase Sapphire Reserve, you'll get Priority Pass access, which will get you into different lounges in different airports. But one of their good deals is like the restaurant option, which now will give you something like $30 of credit to use at certain restaurants in airports. And so you can check that out as an option. Well, it may not be a lounge, but it'll be another way to get free food. Eric Hernandez on Facebook says Terminal 4 at Phoenix Sky Harbor has both pre-security and post-security dining. That's a good deal. Half the Fiber says if you're lucky, you can get soup at the domestic lounge. Yes, if you're at a United lounge that has soup, that's like a real upgrade right there. Justin Thomas says, I was at the Qantas International Lounge at Melbourne a few weeks ago. It was terrible. Sydney's so much better. Lounges are not even equal if they're with the same airline. That is very true. Robert Lou says the Polaris lounges have really pumped up the food and amenities. That's great to hear, but they're really kind of starting from almost zero. So, Travelman Podcast says, Chris, can you review the Singapore Airlines New York to Singapore flight on the upgraded A350 19 hours later? I would like to do that. I'd love to fly that in the Singapore Airlines suite. I think that would be a treat. I'm not sure that I'm going to go from LA to New York to get to Singapore, though. I'm not that much of a glutton for punishment. Larry Nguyen says, how long LA to Vegas from an airplane? It's about an hour, Larry. They're pretty close by. All right, let's go to number 12. Speaking of lines, you will want to get in the best security line. So we talked about lines to get in the best line to check in number 10, and this is to get in the best security line. And so what I'll tell you here is sometimes the best security line is not the closest security line. If the lines are really long in your terminal, sometimes it is worthwhile to go to another terminal. And I'll say, so Ben from Travel Man Podcast, when you were flying through San Diego, I'm not sure if Alaska Airlines is Terminal 1 or Terminal 2, but like some of the terminals in San Diego have like 3 different areas for security lines. And so if I'm like by United and it's long, then sometimes I'll go over to by American, and they're all connected airside. And so, or I do it at LAX quite a bit. LAX is like often unknown that you can connect between most of the terminals at LAX underground. Like you can get from Terminal 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to the Tom Bradley International Terminal, all through these underground tunnels. And you wouldn't know it from the outside, and you barely know it from the inside. But like at the Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX, there is no TSA PreCheck, but there is in the American Airlines Terminal. So when I want to go international and enjoy the lounge, like the Star Alliance Lounge, I go in through the American Airlines thing. And everybody else has American Airlines boarding passes. I've got United or something else, but it's cool. They'll let you in, right? Your thing scans, you go in. Sometimes I've been in airports like Newark where they question it a little bit. They're like, do you know, sir, that these are all the American Airlines flights and you're on United? I'm like, yeah, I know. It's cool. Thanks. I want to get something to eat in there and then head over to their place. So definitely pay attention to other options for security lines. Okay, so now let's talk about security tips number 13. Lucky number 13. And a lot of people have been talking about TSA PreCheck. We'll get there in just a second, I promise. But my first tips for security, and it's one of these where I'm like, sometimes sad that I feel like I have to tell people this, but I have to, which is like, they make you take off your shoes in a lot of airports, and so wear easy to take off shoes. Don't wear metal on your clothes. How many times have you been at the airport and you've seen the person who is like dressed up like Mr. T and has like all the chains and things like that? It's like, really, you have to go through the metal detector. So leave the chains at home, leave the jackets that have all the buckles on them at home. No metal on the clothes, no big belt buckles, no jewelry. You don't need it when you're flying unless it's plastic. And put all your metal, like your cell phones and keys and this and that, in your bag before you even get in the security line. The security line is like the most stressful place to be putting your stuff away. And so do that before you get there when there's not stress, there's not people yelling at you, there's not people behind you. Put it all in there, and then all you have to do when you go to the security line is just show your ID and your boarding pass and put your crap on the conveyor belt and walk through the metal detector. Pretty easy. In the event that you're in a line that makes you take your liquids out and your electronics out, put those all in one easy to access spot. You should pack your luggage knowing that those things are going to have to come out. And so, you know, if you've got like a backpack and then like a suitcase that zips up, don't put stuff in the suitcase that you have to take out when you go through security. Put that in your easy to open duffel bag or backpack or things like that. And if you're like me and you carry like a ton of electronics, then you might want to take some of those out too for security. I do that where I have this bag that's like all these cables. And I think they often think it's a bomb when it goes through because it's all my cables, all my batteries. I just take that bag out separately and send it through security. And then they never question me on it because now it's a little bag instead of like 27 layers of wires. Sugar Cat says 78 people watching. Now there's 89. Let's help Yellow Productions out and click the like button. It'll help with the YouTube algorithm to put up higher in the list. Sugar Cat, thank you. I love the recommendations. And I remember you on the Comic-Con streams too. So thank you. And if you're enjoying the stream, press the like button. I'll totally love it. It tells me you enjoy these, and it'll help other people find it too so they can come and enjoy it as well. Ben says, my advice, which I'm sure Chris would agree, is to wear a tracksuit. So comfy and nothing to take off. Tracksuit, yeah, that is comfy. And you're right, there's no metal there. Joshua Marilla says, I've heard that blankets aren't sanitary on airlines. Is this true? You know, I wouldn't put like the blanket over my head or anything like that, but assuming you're just like putting it on your lap or you're putting it around here, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, I don't know that I'd use one that wasn't wrapped, you know, but if it's like in a bag, you can assume the airline has probably done something to that. But just, you know, maybe not up here with that blanket, right? Don't lick it. Poke says his usual clothing is sweatpants, t-shirt, all watches, phones, everything inside the bag. That's very good. Remy D says, I always get confused which orientations the bin should be in the conveyor belt. I swear TSA changes their mind all the time. They probably do, Remy. Ben says, don't lick the seats. Yeah, the seats are probably not sanitary. That's a good tip to not lick the seats. Korea Food Travel says, if I bring a DSLR microphone, how should I went through security? You mean a DSLR camera? If you have the camera, like I generally, if I'm going through PreCheck or things like that, I generally leave the camera in the bag. Sometimes I take it out if I'm in an airport that I think is particularly anal. I do have like a special bag that I have my camera in, so I can just pull out that bag and then put the camera in the bin if I need to. The microphone, that's fine. The microphone's like really small. Robert Liu says, some airports, international and domestic, have a special line for first and business. Absolutely. So when you're looking at those lines for security, look at first class, business class. Some airlines will have like the fast track security line. Like if you have a short connection, then you can go on the fast track security line. You show them, you're like, hey, my flight leaves in 20 minutes. And then they'll let you go through there. All right. So PreCheck and global entry. If you're flying in the US, I highly recommend you get what's called TSA PreCheck. PreCheck. It's like TSA PRE, and then it's like a little check mark next to it. And at airports, sometimes people call it, oh, where's the TSA line, or where's the pre-line, or where's the PreCheck line. It's called all those things. I believe it's called TSA PreCheck is the official name of the program. And TSA PreCheck allows you to basically get vetted by the TSA and then go in the line that you don't have to take out any of your liquids, you don't have to take off your shoes, you don't have to take out your electronics, and instead of going through the body scanner, you go through a metal detector. So if you're in the US and you fly more than a couple times a year, you should totally get PreCheck. It costs like $80 for 5 years. It's a pretty good deal. But the better deal if you're in the US is to get global entry. Get global entry for $100 for 5 years, and global entry comes with PreCheck. So what does global entry get you? Global entry allows you to bypass the long lines at immigration, and you can do your customs thing on just a little computer. You say yes, yes, yes. They look at your picture and they say, okay, you're good, you can come through. The thing that makes global entry harder is when you apply for it, you have to go through an interview with Customs and Border Patrol, though it's basically a pretty short interview and not a pretty big deal. And if you have like a premium card, like the Amex Platinum card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, a lot of those premium cards will cover the fees for TSA PreCheck or global entry. A lot of other countries that aren't the US have options for like mobile passports, things like that. You can do mobile passport coming into the US. So look at ways to speed up your pass-through immigrations. Mr. Pickles says, load your bags on the belt handles first so you can grab them when they come out. On the belt, the luggage belt. Let's see. Roberto says, American Airlines having many problems lately, especially with the carry-on bags. They started charging $25. Yeah, I hate, you know, like, that is a big problem with airplanes. It's like everybody's bringing their stuff to the carry-on because they charge for money. I mean, they charge money to check it, so everybody carries it on, but then they check it for free at the, I mean, it's a whole ridiculous game. So that's, I could rant on that for a whole different video. But Anna Toy says, shoes with any heels seem to always go off in the PreCheck line. I could see that, Anna. Maybe they've got maybe like metal in the heels or metal in the sole to give them a little bit more stability. Right. Tanner Wilson asked about, I think, PreCheck and global entry that says, do you have to fly a certain number of miles flights to be eligible, or is it available to everyone? Tanner, I believe it's available to everyone. There's no, like, you don't have to be a frequent flyer for it. And I think where people got that idea is at the beginning of the PreCheck program, some of the first people that were eligible, the airlines were nominating people that were frequent flyers to be eligible. But now if you pay, it's open to everybody. Ben says, a side unrelated note to the video, he wants to thank anyone who listens to a podcast, and thanks to me for my help. Absolutely, Ben. And if you guys haven't heard Ben's podcast, search for the Travel Man podcast. It's a pretty fun podcast. We've done a couple together, too. And Chinmay says, I do think you have to be a U.S. citizen. Yes, that is correct. Global entry and PreCheck, you have to be U.S. citizens. Lemmy Cake says, how do you get the cost covered by your Chase card? Is it a refund? Well, Lemmy Cakes, assuming you have a Chase card, like one of the premium ones, like the Chase Sapphire Reserve, then you'll just get a credit. So when you go pay for global entry and it's $100, they'll just then put a $100 credit to your card afterwards. Mr. Pickle says, global entry also helps when returning through customs, not just immigration. Yeah, that's a great tip. Because there's long lines through passport control, but there's also long lines through customs with baggage claim. And if you have the little printout from global entry, then you'll just whiz through that too. Sometimes I've been at LAX where those lines look like they could be 2 or 3 hours, and the global entry lines are like 2 or 3 minutes. So it's totally worth it. Remy D asks if there's a background check on PreCheck. There's you have to do like fingerprints where they do a background check, but there's not an interview like there is for global entry. All right, number 14. Oh, actually, I have a couple more comments first before I go to 14. So we're still on 13. One of the things that's you'll notice if you fly a lot, you may get the boarding pass that has 4 S's printed on it. This is definitely an American security thing, but it will happen in flights outside of the U.S. too. The top of the boarding pass will say SSSS. It's basically, if you get the SSSS boarding pass, you've been selected for secondary special screening. Ha ha! That means you're going to spend a lot of time going through security. So that's the one where they're going to open up your bags and they're going to check everything. It's just one of those. It's just one of those bad experiences overall. But if you know it and you see the S's, then you'll know I need to plan another 15 minutes to go through security. All right. And if you do get selected for special screening, just be nice. They're just doing their job. Frankly, if you're nice to them, it'll go faster. All right, this is number 14. Can everybody count the 14 chairs there? All right, this is number 14. So after you've gone through security, check the airport monitors again. Things might have changed. Your flight might have been delayed while you were going through there. You're not checking your phones. Check that airport monitor again. Make sure the gate's still where you expect it. And don't just rely on where your boarding pass says the flight is or on those subscriptions that you signed up for. 15. You brought in an empty water bottle. Take a time to fill up that empty water bottle at a drinking fountain, at a water bottle filler, and buy some food. Either buy some food to eat, buy some food to take on the plane. 16, go to the bathroom. Go to the restroom. You know, you may be thinking to yourself, look, I'm just going Los Angeles to Vegas. It's a 45-minute flight. It's not a big deal. I don't really have to go to the bathroom all that much. Seriously, go to the bathroom before you get on the plane. I don't know how many times I've got on planes that was a 1-hour flight and ended up spending 5 hours sitting on that plane, sitting on the runway, ended up in a different airport, use the bathroom before you get on the plane. And then 10 minutes later, if you haven't gone on the plane, you feel like you have to go to the bathroom again, go to the bathroom again. There's no reason to hold your bladder. Nobody gets like any points for that. Ben from the Travel Man podcast says, I always go to the bathroom before I fly. That's good. I love it. You are a good bladder minder. And Half the Fiber says, seriously, pee even if you don't feel like you have to pee. And Ben says, bathrooms and airplanes are dangerous. Why are they dangerous? I'm curious. Korea Food Travel says, I thought some of the airplane, they would allow people to bring food in on board. I don't think there's any airline that doesn't let you bring food on board. Lots of people do that. I don't think it's good to be that person that brings on like the really smelly food. Like, you know, you bring on the McDonald's with the French fries and everybody's like, ooh, smells so good. You know, so if I am bringing food on the plane, I like to be at least a little bit mindful of that and bring on the food that not everybody's like, did you bring enough for us? All right, and Sugar Cat, thanks for the likes. I love it. Sugar Cat says we're at 44 likes. 44 likes now. Just one more like, and we'll get to 45. Thumbs up. All right, 17. Lots of time before your flight. Relax in the lounge. We spent the earlier time talking about lounges, but if you go to the airport and you're not rushing and you're not like in the noisy atmosphere and you're in a lounge, your air travel experience will be that much better because you get unlimited food, you'll get unlimited drinks, you'll get unlimited soup if you're in a good United lounge, or you might get really good food. I also like to go for a walk before a flight. So if I've got a lot of time and maybe I don't have lounge access, I walk around the airport. I'll be like, I'll walk to the end of the terminal, I'll walk to the end of the other terminal, because if I'm flying New York to Singapore, like Ben said, and it's 17 hours, I'm going to be sitting for a long time, so I get my exercise in, and I go for a walk. Especially if I need to go to sleep on the plane, get a little bit of exercise. Got nothing else to do. All right, and thanks for the extra likes for everybody who did. We're up to 52 now. All right, including Rival Adversary, thank you very much. Yippee says, I like to put a quarter in the TV booth and watch the Brady Bunch. That's funny. Ben asked if I like to walk around the cabin much. I don't really do laps around the cabin, but I'm probably one of those people that goes to the bathroom on the plane every couple hours. And whether I have to or not, I just like to get up and stand around for a little bit or go see if they have like some water in the back or some snacks. And so I am up quite a bit, but I'm not that person who's like, sitting there in the plane, stretching, you know, got their behind in other people's faces. Not that guy. Don't worry. All right, we're at the final 3, and then we're going to wrap it up. So 18, tip number 18 is to get to your gate 15 minutes before your boarding time. I can't think of how many times American Airlines board way before their time. Like, I was just coming back from Hawaii, and like the boarding time was 6:10 in the morning, and they were already boarding at 6 in the morning. They consistently do that, and it bugs me. But the other reason why you want to get there 15 minutes before is sometimes gates change. And it might be a long walk to your new gate. So you don't want to be getting to the gate for the first time 10 minutes into boarding to only find out your flight is no longer at that gate anymore. You want to get there early enough so that if your gate has changed, you've got plenty of time to walk over to your new gate. And when you do get to the gate, right, check to make sure that the gate you're at says where you're going. If you're going to Honolulu, make sure the sign says Honolulu. If it doesn't say Honolulu, or if it's blank or there's nobody there, probably in the wrong spot. Probably need to figure out where your flight is instead. Tip number 19. All right, you're at the gate. Get your plane stuff ready. So once you're on board, it's easy to take out what you need, right? Don't be that person that's holding up the whole line, getting out everything. You see, open up your bag, like put what you need in like a single pocket or two so that you can get to your seat. You can open the backpack, pull out 3 things, put in your seat, and put in the overhead or put underneath, and you can sit down. You know, I mean, it amazes me how long people spend taking stuff out of their bags because they didn't think about what they're going to need when they sit down. I mean, I guess when you've been on planes, like, all the time, you're like, I need the same set of things. I need my iPad, I need my headphones, and I need my bottle of water. That's it. So all those 3 things, easy to get. Headphones, iPad, bottle of water, seat pocket, overhead. Sit down. That's it. It's not that hard. All right. So let's go to number 20. All right, so if your flight's delayed or your flight's canceled, what do you do? This is the most important tip I have. If your flight is delayed or your flight is canceled, do not just be like a sheep and wait in line at the gate. If your flight is canceled, like when you're on the plane, like you're on the plane, you're out on the runway, they say, mechanical issues, we got to go back. What's the first thing you should do? Take out your phone and call the airline immediately. While you're sitting on the plane, call the airline. Or if you're off the plane, same thing, call the airline. If you get in the line, call the airline. Call the airline standing from the line because that line might take 30 minutes. You might call the airline and in 10 minutes, they might be able to get you other tickets someplace else. Or use the mobile app to rebook. A lot of times they'll say, oh, we've noticed you've had a delay in your flight or you've had issues. Do you want to take one of these 3 flights? You can have the mobile app to do that. A lot of airports have self-service kiosks that you can go if you have flight issues. Go to those kiosks. If you have lounge access for your airline, agents in the lounge can issue you new tickets and connections. And Justin Thomas says that if you have lounge access, they are usually really helpful. They are really helpful. And my final tip on the flight delayed or canceled is go back to the front ticket counters. I do this all the time where like I'll be in there, I'll be at the gate, they'll be like, look, we've had a 2-hour delay, and if you have a connection, come and see me. I just turn around and go out the airport. I go to the front. Because a lot of times I might even ask them to send me through a different airport. I do that a lot. I'm in San Diego, I'll be like, can you just send me out of LAX? Or send me on this flight. And so that's why it's good to have the mobile app so you can look and give them options. So when you go to them and say, hey, I've misconnected or I'm not going to connect, I was wondering, maybe you could put me on this flight. And it's really great to offer them those suggestions. And Mr. Pickles gives a tip on this one, which is have all your airline phone numbers pre-programmed on your phone and put your frequent flyer numbers in the contact note section. That is a great tip. I've got all the airline numbers in my phone. So I just hit up the United 1K line, American Airlines line, this and that. Because you want to be the first person to get to an agent and say, you know, my flight's been delayed, my flight's been canceled. An OC girl chimed in and said, I missed my flight once because I was at the wrong gate. Yeah, it's really, you know, got the headphones on, this and that. So it's important to make sure the gate you're at. Otherwise, you may be sitting there and be like, when's my flight going to board? And it's never going to board because it's a different flight. Yeah, that totally sucked. All right, and Sugar Cat says they have to go to bed, but remember to like and subscribe. If this was your first time watching my videos, your first time here to Yellow Productions, definitely hit that subscribe button. I've got the subscribe pillow, but it's totally going to be backwards because these YouTube live streams are backwards. Hit that subscribe button. I do live streams every Monday night. My next live stream is next Monday night. I've still got this contest going on for my United Polaris Business Class Amenity Kit. I posted a picture up on Facebook with this kit and all the stuff in it. It's still open for 1 more week, so if you find my Facebook page and you find the picture of this, you've got 1 more week to win this amenity kit. All you have to do is find the picture of this amenity kit. I will mail this anywhere in the world to whoever wins. But to win, you've got to comment on that and tell me what your favorite airline is and why, and then I'll announce the winner in the live stream next week. So, you know how this goes. I don't say goodbye because I'm going to see you all in the next video next week, 1 week from today, Monday, October 1st, 8 p.m. Los Angeles time. Be there or be square. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the live stream. 91 viewers on YouTube, 8 on Facebook. I appreciate you all. Of course, none of this would be possible without any of you, because I would not sit in my room merely talking to an iPad. That would be kind of crazy. But the fact that you're listening makes this all real. All right, everybody. Have excellent travels, and I'll see you next week. All right.